So welcome to another educational and inspiring AAM workshop. This workshop is entitled Banning Horse Carriages for Activists. We know that forcing horses to pull heavy, oversized carriages on pavement through busy streets, through extreme weather and many other dangers has proven to be detrimental, inhumane, and deadly. Yet this cruel industry continues to exist and make money from their suffering. In this workshop, Jodie Wiederkehr will share why horse carriages are cruel for horses and how they suffer, the steps she took to get horse carriages banned in Chicago, tips and action steps for grassroots groups, and more. So my name is Michelle Granberg. I'm your moderator. I'm a team member and mentor with Animal Activism Mentorship. I'm located in New Jersey, and I've been a vegan and activist for 6 years. AAM's mission is to eradicate violence and build a culture of empathy and compassion, which ultimately results in animal liberation. We strive to build a global community of activists through our free 3-month mentorship program that pairs experienced activists with aspiring activists. Through one-on-one mentoring, we intend to generate an increased number of effective activists worldwide because we know this movement needs more activists. Additionally, we offer free workshops that train and educate our mentors, mentees, and the public. We have a podcast called the Animal Liberation Hour, and we host large-scale in-person activism events. AAM is proud to be fueled by FARM, the Farmed Animal Rights Movement, one of the oldest animal rights organizations in the country. If you're interested in applying to become a mentor or mentee, or want to get involved or to donate, please visit our website, animalactivismmentorship.com, and follow both AAM and FARM on social media. So with that being said, it is my pleasure to introduce our guest speaker for tonight. Jodie Wiederkehr is the founder and executive director of the Chicago Alliance for Animals and the Partnership to Ban Horse Carriages Worldwide. Her all-volunteer grassroots organization banned horse carriages in the 3rd largest city in the U.S. in a record 2.5 years by an overwhelming 46-4 vote without any paid staff, celebrity support, accidents or fatalities, and with very little funding. She's formed nearly 20 banned horse carriages chapters around the world and has been guiding and sharing her steps and strategies with activists in other cities. We're also welcoming Tiffany Stair, who will also share about actions that Revolution Philadelphia is taking to ban horse carriages in Philly, okay, after Jodie presents. And as I said, we'll open up for Q&A after the presentation, so please hold your questions until then. And now I'll turn it over to Jodie.
Good evening, everyone, and thank you for joining this call. I hope I can encourage all of you to fight and stick with a campaign to ban horse carriages and to successfully get to that ban. I apologize in advance. I have a cough, so if I cough or I have to take a drink, hopefully I don't have a coughing fit during this. So tonight I want to share with you how Chicago got horse carriages banned in 2.5 years without any accidents, any fatalities, anybody being rushed to the emergency room, no horses collapsing on the street, and no horses dying in Chicago. And how in Chicago and basically almost every city, horses are abused, exploited, and the laws that are on the books to protect the horses are rarely enforced. After the 2017 Animal Rights Conference, CAA formed in 2015, and we started doing outreach on the street once a month to educate the public. And in 2017, my colleague Barbara and I were at the National Animal Rights Conference in Washington, D.C., and we decided that our 1 month or 1 hour a month outreach was just not going to cut it. It was not going to ban horse carriages. So we put our heads together and we decided when we got back to Chicago we were going to pick, well, we actually picked a day right then and there. When we got back, we were going to document the horse carriage operations from the start of the day on a Saturday until the end of the day. We researched Chicago's laws regarding the horse carriage trade, the laws that were on the books to protect the horses as well as the public. And so in August of 2017, on a Saturday, we went down to the horse carriage stand at about 9 a.m. We started documenting when each horse arrived, and we documented until 1 in the morning. Now, Chicago's law regarding how long the horses could work is only 6 hours. What we documented that day was that every horse was being worked more than double what the law allowed. I'm going to probably go back and forth on some of these slides and what I'm talking about, but this is a slide that Ariana, it was in my head, but Ariana designed it. She's on the call here, and I was really proud of that, of this logo. So when we documented the horses at about 1 in the morning, we called the police to alert them that the carriage horses were being worked more than double what the law allowed. The police did not know the law. They didn't really care. Nobody came. And so we decided to do this again. And this is really one of the things that I think is critical if you want to pass a horse carriage ban in your city. We did this regularly. We did it the first time in August for more than 12 hours. I did it again in November, the Saturday after Thanksgiving. And this is typically how the horse carriage drivers react when we would catch them breaking the law.
Here comes Omar and the same horse that was out last night past midnight. Same horse that was on the street today. He's been out for probably 8 hours now, which is more than 6 for a 24-hour period. And this is older man who also has been on the street for about 8 hours. This is horse
I wanted
carriage
to show you
7.
these videos because they show number one, the horse carriage operators often would give us the finger, make very obscene gestures toward us. And those are very important to get on video or on camera. We never reciprocated, and it's very important. I tell all volunteers to, number one, even talk to the operators, and definitely do not give back what they give with gestures or with any sort of cursing, because these are people who are meant to represent your city, your tourism in your city. And when they are doing these obscene gestures and flipping people off, I mean, I have a video of a driver lifting his hand and flipping us with a young girl in his carriage. So we would show these after we'd take these videos to Chicago's alderman and mayor and say, are these the type of people you want representing your city? And see, they don't have any videos of us doing that to them because we don't reciprocate with that. The second time we documented the violations, which was a Saturday after Thanksgiving, same situation. We documented every single horse being worked more than double what the law allowed. We had been trying to get a meeting with the alderman where the horse carriages work since May of 2015. These offices never returned our calls. And so after this second time in November, I finally got a call back from the alderman's office, Alderman Riley. His aide told me that he was not interested in a horse carriage ban, so there was no need to meet with him. She didn't call because of our violations. I hadn't even reached out to his office yet, but I alerted her in the call that we documented multiple violations on the Saturday prior, and that we were going to send out press releases the next morning about all these violations, including the fact that most of the horses were never allowed to go to the bucket to drink water, and that they were all worked more than double what the law allowed. So I said, please pass this along to him and ask him to return my call. Well, I didn't get a call back, and the next day we put out our press releases. We got, I think, 3 media hits. I know we got 1 television interview, and I believe 2 news media coverage. And within 2 weeks, the Chicago Sun-Times reported that Alderman Riley introduced a ban. So he told me he was not interested in a ban, but once we proved to him that they break the law day in and day out, he then introduced a ban. So I've had actually people tell me, oh, Chicago's politicians seem so progressive. No, that's not the case. Chicago's aldermen, none of them wanted to touch this. None of them were interested in a ban until we proved to them that they were breaking the law. Excuse me.
Here comes
Here are just a few. Now these are a bit dated because this is from an older presentation, but as I'm sure anybody who's on this call knows, there are accidents, violent accidents, deadly accidents almost weekly in this trade around the world. I'm sure most of you know about Ryder, who died recently, Billy, who died in his stall, Aisha. These all happened in New York City. But these are some that happened a while back that were pretty hard to read about. And it's also important to know when you're communicating with officials that it's not just horses that are injured and who get killed because of this trade, it's also people. So even if your officials don't care about animals, they should care about people visiting their city and the people who work in their city. This is one I share often. This is an American couple who were in Ireland, and they get flung off a cliff when the horse gets spooked. So they're from Phoenix, and then they go to Ireland, they ride in a horse carriage, and they die. That's a very important one to share with officials because that can happen in your city to tourists. Nobody wants that to happen. No official wants that to happen in their city. So I'll go back now to my the story of how our bill was introduced. It was introduced in December of 2017. After the holidays, we started reaching out to every alderman. As some of you know, we do what's called daily action alerts, DAAs for short. These are meant to contact decision makers on a daily basis. Throughout our campaign, we did a DAA every single day of the week, targeting a different alderman or the mayor of Chicago. Chicago has 50 aldermen, so that's, you know, almost 2 months taken up there. I provide phone numbers, email addresses, Facebook page, Twitter handle, Instagram handle. If they have a website contact form on their website, I provide every way to contact that official as I can find to make it very easy for my volunteers to take 1 minute to make one quick phone call or send one message one way. We're not asking you to call, email, tweet, just one way. And then after doing so, simply write how you took action. Some people don't like that. I don't allow people to react, and there's a reason for that. If I allowed everybody to react and share it before taking action, then there'd be maybe 3 or 4 people taking action and 100, 200, 300 people reacting. We don't need reactions. We need actual people contacting the officials. So that's how they work. And now, after doing these since 2017 for more than 5 years, I see people now who used to react, who are doing the DAAs. They're making the call, they're sending the email. So they're very powerful, and they only take a minute, because the whole goal of these are not to write long emails. It's to convince the official that you want horse carriages banned. And that's all you, I mean, once they get 5 messages, they're not going to read them all. They just need to know that you're just another person who's urging them to ban horse carriages in their city. Once we got to September of 2018, we finally got our bill in the here in the license committee for a hearing. We had enough votes in the committee to get it passed and on to the following week's full city council vote. After a 4.5-hour hearing, the chair of this committee blocked a vote. She refused to allow it to go to a vote that day. And what she did that day was she blocked the democratic process. After our side, the alderman on our side basically said, okay, let's vote on your she had made a decision not to allow it to go to a vote. They had to vote on that. And they kept trying to get the vote to pass. And somebody seconded her motion to stop the vote. So the whole thing was done. And she actually had the audacity to say, why are we talking about horses when there are children in the street being shot? So she almost turned it into a racist issue and insinuating that the people up here who are fighting for horses don't care about the inner city kids who are being shot. And that it was so tragic to me because, of course, I and many others care about the violence in Chicago. We care about many issues. We all know that our compassion is not limited, but that this is an issue we were working on. So once that she blocked this vote, we had to wait. They said another year to get it on the agenda. And we thought by September of 2019, it would be on the agenda. But by then, the mayor of Chicago was blocking it from being on the agenda. So that whole time, that next year and a half, we continued to do daily action alerts. We continued to, I daily reached out to anybody I could find in Chicago, and I would PM them on Facebook and say, hey, I had a little thing that I'd copy and paste. Do you live in Chicago? If so, do you know who your alderman is? If not, please click here and type in your address. And I urged everybody to reach out to their alderman or alderwoman and urge them to sign on to as a co-sponsor. And that's very important because a lot of people do not know that they have a right to meet with their city council member. So it's our jobs as people who are running these campaigns to reach out to our local residents and urge them and provide them the information. I would literally provide them the link to find out who their city council member was. Or if they knew, I would look up their phone number for them or their email address and say, here is Alderman Jones' email. Here's his phone number. Will you please simply call him, take 1 minute and urge him to co-sponsor the bill to ban horse carriages. It sounds like a lot of work, but as many of you know on here, a lot of people give up on campaigns. And the night that after a 4.5-hour hearing, our bill got blocked. After, many of us testified in support of it. It was so hard. I went home and cried myself to sleep. Well, I got up the next day and I started over. If I hadn't stopped, horses would still be on our streets. And sadly, a lot of people give up on these campaigns, and you can't. Philadelphia is on track to ban horse carriages because of Stephanie and Tiffany's work. And they will do it if they stick with it. Sadly, I've guided many other cities and activists on campaigns, and then they stop. So if you stop, you will not get a horse carriage ban. I'll show you a few more of these accidents. A lot of times, a city will pass a ban because of an accident or because of a deadly accident, such as Guadalajara. Salt Lake City is another one. This is one of the, this is not the actually one, but this is another thing that is very important when talking with your officials, is an example like this. This is a woman who was in the carriage, and she had to jump out of the carriage holding a baby. So, and another thing to remember, and I hope you're all taking notes, is there are no seatbelts in horse carriages. There are no child safety seats. There's no airbags. So everybody thinks that these, these are old-timey safe rides. They're not. A horse can be 1,000+ pounds, and they are prey animals, so they spook very easily. And when they do, anybody in the way of that horse can be an instant victim. This is the one I was thinking of, and I would think that this would have banned horse carriages in St. Louis when a horse literally took off right before Christmas and spooked and ran into the Missouri River and drowned in the frigid water with the carriage still attached to him. So imagine if there had been a child in that carriage, or, you know, a person. That would have, I mean, it was tragic enough, but if a person had died, you can be sure St. Louis would have banned the horse carriages. One thing we do when we would document violations is obviously looking for violations, but also looking for anything that shows how little the drivers care about the horses. And this is a good example.
This carriage driver just threw a lit cigarette. No, this is a public sidewalk. Just threw a lit cigarette on the ground next to this horse's face. No, nope, public sidewalk. Public sidewalk. So the lit cigarette is currently underneath the horse's body. There's the lit cigarette, and there's the woman who's smoking it right by the horse's face.
That's probably what you want, are the scraps.
There you go.
So we would see this a lot, is the horse carriage operators would be smoking have their cigarette right by the horse's nostrils. And I'm not a fan of secondhand smoke. So to me, just the idea that these horses have the blinders on and they've got a bit in their mouth, they're already completely, you know, their whole body is, they have no, I can't talk, but, you know, no will of their own. And here they have to breathe secondhand smoke almost all day long. In Chicago, it'd be more than 12 hours. In Chicago, one of our laws was that they had to be provided water at least once an hour. Now, the drivers would say, well, you can't lead a horse to water. Well, if you can lead a horse to water, but you can't make them drink. That's true. But if you don't lead the horse to water, they can't drink. If they have no access to water, they can never drink. And we would show up for our outreach, and many times there was no water. Here's an example of this.
We've been here about 20 minutes. We got here, there's no water. And 20 minutes after we get here, now they're filling the bucket of water for the horses. So how long do they go without water? Sir, why didn't they have water before? Sir? Can you answer me? So if we don't come down, we don't get water all day. Is that it?
Now, this was at the beginning of our campaign. I don't recommend talking or communicating with the drivers. I was learning at this point, so I really should have just documented it and narrated my video and said they had no water when we arrived. The reason he was getting water was because we had called 911 and reported it. That's the reason he was giving water, and I should have just narrated that instead of talking to him. Now, I don't know if any of you noticed the horse in the background here. I'm going to play this again so you can watch this.
Sir? Can you answer me? So if we don't come down, they don't get water all day. Is that it?
So I'm also showing you these videos because these are the kind of things that it's very important if you're going to run a campaign in your city, and I hope you all will, is to know the laws like the back of your hand. I had to study them and look at them, and I would share the laws on my Facebook page often. In the summer, if it was near 90 degrees, which is a temperature that they could not work at, I would let everybody know that it's going to be close to 90 degrees today at Northerly Island, because that's where they took the temperature. So I would let everyone know, if you're going to be near the horse carriage stand today, please check the temperature at Northerly Island. If it's 90 degrees or hotter, please take a screenshot of that and take a video of the horse and the driver and the license plate number. You have to give people the tools to know how to document the violations. Because a lot of times people would say, yeah, I saw the horses working, but that didn't help. You have to provide a video to the officials with the horse carriage operator, so they know who the operator is, what company was violating the law, what the number of the horse carriage is. Those things are very important, because hearsay and just telling your officials that they were working the horses when it's too hot is not good enough. You have to provide all of the video and all the documentation. You have to make it very easy for the officials to do their job. Due to our documentation, the drivers were cited thousands of times. In 1 year, they were cited over 334 times due to us documenting violations. Excuse me. The city threatened to take all 3 companies to court, and then the settlements were off the table, but then they settled with them as usual. So the city wasn't, they were citing them, but then they were also only making them pay a fraction of the fines. Because the fines added up to over $200,000. They did not pay that. But even after all the violations, they continued to break the law day in and day out. These are just a few examples of some of the violations. These are, in a way, accidents. A horse took off, but it never made the news, and nobody was hurt, thank God. This is a horse that fell that a bystander saw and sent to me. But again, they got the horse up before any media covered it, or, as far as we know, the horse was okay. This happened before our campaign started. Our campaign formed in May of 2015. But, this was an accident that could have been very serious, with 3 children in the, or 4 children in the van. These just show more of the violations and the fines. This was Antique Coach and Carriages. This was the biggest of the 3 Chicago horse carriage companies. This was their website that shows the horses, in fields, eating grass, and nice natural looking fantasy land. This shows that the owner talks about breeding the horses. And we all know that there are so many horses that go off to slaughter, and that a lot of pro horse carriage people say, well, if you ban horse carriages, then the horses are going to go to slaughter. Well, here you've got a horse carriage operation breeding horses. So they're the problem, not the animal advocates. And this is what the inside of Antique Coach and Carriage looks like, where you just saw the horses in the grass. After working a 12+ hour day on the hard streets of Chicago, they would go into basically a cage for a horse, a stall that's just bigger than their body. We don't know if those horses could lay down or stretch. Okay, so after we could not get the bill back on the agenda in the license committee in September of 2019, and then October of 2019 came and it still wasn't, and we knew the following month they were going to renew their licenses. We finally did a protest outside Mayor Lightfoot's office, and we urged a meeting, which is what we wanted, and what we wanted since 2015. Because of our protest, it was peaceful. We did get a meeting with her office the following week or 2. We went in, and the mayor's, we didn't meet with the mayor, but her staff promised us that what they wanted to do was allow the horse carriage operators 1 more year of licenses. In return, they would be required to make sure that all the horses would be allowed to go to sanctuary or to good homes. And we did not want the horses to get licensed another year, and the horses to have to be overworked for another year on the streets. However, Our ultimate goal was that the horses do get to sanctuary and into forever homes. So we agreed to this deal. The meeting ended with the mayor's office asking us to basically write out what we would like to see with this deal, you know, how it would go down. So I went home and I proceeded to write out exactly what we wanted. The fact that the sanctuaries would be true sanctuaries and the horses would never be forced to, you know, be carriage horses or do anything that would, you know, they shouldn't have to work. They should be allowed to just be horses and have a forever home at a sanctuary. After I sent this back to the mayor's office, we never heard back from her office. They completely ghosted us, would not return our calls, would not return our emails. So what it came down to is they had a meeting with us to, you know, satisfy us, gave us an idea and completely refused to follow through. So again, I can't stress enough that Chicago's campaign was not easy by any means. It took tenacity and it took the fact that we never gave up to get there. And every one of you on this call tonight, if you have horse carriage rides in your city, you can do this too. And it can be done, but you have to keep fighting. And these are the main steps that I encourage everybody to employ in your campaign, as well as other ideas. I mean, Ban Horse Carriages Philadelphia and Revolution Philadelphia had a rally back in September, which was amazing. And I went and I think it was awesome. And I always encourage new ideas and whatever ideas you have, but these are what we did that worked. And I just want to go through these real quickly and elaborate a bit on each one. So as we talked about, make sure you know your laws. Go online, type in your cities, you know, Pittsburgh, laws regarding horse carriages. If you have trouble finding them, contact your city hall, contact your mayor's office and ask them what the laws are regarding carriage horses in your city. But it's not just the laws that are meant to protect the horses, not just the animal welfare laws. You also want to know about any laws that are on the books to protect the public. For example, in Chicago, the carriage horses could not be on the street during rush hours. So between 7 and 9 a.m. and 4 to 6 p.m. Monday to Friday, they could not be working. And yet we would stand near the horse carriage, one of their, I'm on meds. So I'm sorry, I'm on this cough medicine and I can't think very clearly, so I'm sorry. But where the horse carriages, why can't I think of what I'm trying to say here? Stable, that's the word. We would stand by their stable close to 4 o'clock on a weekday, and they would leave the stable at 3:30. And it would take them about a half hour to get from the stable to the stand. And so they would say to us, as we were documenting the horses being on the street they would leave at 5:30. So they would get to the stable to the stand at 6, but they would still be on the street between 4 and 6, which is during rush hour. So we would videotape and document and narrate our video to say, this carriage horse number 2 with antique coach and carriage is working on Tuesday, October 7th at 5:30 p.m. and they are breaking the law. And they would say to us in our video, oh, we can be out now. We just can't be at the stand until 6. They would talk to us like we were stupid. And the laws are very clear on the books. That may be the way they've always done it because officials don't follow through. I mean, the laws on the books were kind of moot because the Chicago's agency that was supposed to enforce these laws, which was called Business Affairs and Consumer Protection. I wrote to them when we first started our campaign and said, how often do you monitor the horse carriage trade? And the supervisor of this agency wrote me back. I got it in an email that stated that they are a complaint-driven agency and that they work Monday through Friday, 9 to 5. So they weren't on the street to make sure that the horses were not working between 4 and 6 on Monday through Friday. They weren't down there on Saturdays or Sundays to make sure they weren't working them 12 plus hours. They weren't down there on the 4th of July to make sure they weren't working them when it was 92 degrees. So that was our job. Did we want to spend our Saturdays from 9 in the morning till 1 in the morning documenting horses and being flipped off? No, of course not. But I knew that it was a sacrifice to get to where we got. And I also, for example, on the 4th of July once, I had a friend in town and it was about 92 degrees. And I said, I'm sorry, I have to go to the horse carriage stand today. I know there's going to be horses out and they're going to be working them illegally. And I have to get this videotaped because it will help, and it will help end horse carriages. And so I did that. And these are sacrifices that you might have to make, you know, once a month, twice a month. But think about it. These horses are out every single day. So these are small sacrifices that we make to prove to our officials that the laws are not being followed. And again, so it's important to make sure you know your laws and then document those violations as often as you can. And you don't have to do it every time. Get your top volunteers to do it as well. Okay, let's see. And then you've got to send those violations to your officials. Send it to the agency that's supposed to monitor and enforce the laws regarding the trade. So like Business Affairs and Consumer Protection in Chicago, find out which agency, and you might have to ask your mayor what, or your town clerk or whoever the top dog is, who monitors this trade, who is supposed to enforce the laws regarding this trade. Okay. So you send it to them as well as your officials. So then when you start doing your daily action alerts, in Chicago, for example, we started out day one, we did the mayor. I provided all the contact information for our mayor. Okay. The next day, we did the first ward. Next day, the second ward. And then by the time we got through all 50 Chicago City Council members, for those city council members who were not yet co-sponsors on the bill to ban horse carriages, we did it again. And since I already did a DAA on Alderman Jones, I don't have to recreate the wheel. I copy it, I paste it, and I urge people to do that action, to take 1 minute. And here's something you're going to hear people say. I always contact my officials. They never respond. They don't care. That might be true. That may be true that they're not responding to you. It may be true that they don't care. But the fact is after doing this campaign and starting our DAAs in 2017, for 2.5 years that we did those, when we finally got our bill to the full city council for a vote, it passed 46-4. So we had, I believe, 26 or 27 official co-sponsors when the bill went to a vote. So we had more than half. We had enough to pass, but it passed 46-4. So even though about half of Chicago City Council never returned our calls, never told us their position, never told us they would support it, they voted to support it. So just because people don't call you back, we don't do the DAAs to get a call back. We don't do the DAAs to get a return email. If you do, that's bonus, that's great. But that's not why we do it. We do it to constantly keep that pressure on. And I really would love any questions about that when we get to questions. We did continue educational demonstrations once a month. I only did them once a month for 1 hour. It's not a lot of time. But it's important because the point of educational demonstrations is reaching the public, reaching the people who might not be aware of why horse carriage operations are inhumane and why they're dangerous. So when we would go down to the horse carriage stand, we would have our signs, we would have leaflets that we would pass out. We had a paper petition and urging everybody to sign, and everybody from anywhere can sign the petition, because horse carriage rides are considered a tourist industry, and that, you know, a lot of officials will say, well, the tourists love it. Well, what we found were a lot of tourists did not like it, as well as a lot of locals. So the petition is meant for anyone to sign, as well as the DAAs. I forgot to mention that anybody from anywhere can do the DAAs. Another thing you'll hear from people is, well, I live in a different state. I live in a different country. Your officials don't want to hear from me. First of all, the DAAs are about quantity, but about getting as many people to take action as possible. The officials do not have time to research where every phone call, email, Facebook message, tweet, website contact form comes from. All they know is they today got 50 phone calls and 30 emails and 20 Facebook messages and 17 tweets. You know, they're not checking. And if you want to tell, you know, if you are contacting an official from a different city and you want to tell them, you know, you live in wherever, you can. If you don't want to, you don't have to. I do the DAAs for Philadelphia and Dallas on a regular basis. Those are my two most, Dallas and Philly and New York City are my three most active cities. And I try to do their DAAs for them on a regular basis. Half the time I don't say who I am. I just urge them to ban horse carriages. If I get someone to talk to me on the phone, I usually do tell them where I'm from, and I tell them that I ran a campaign in Chicago that banned them and why they should ban them. And then I also say I won't be visiting Charleston or Charlotte or Dallas until horse carriages are banned. So the educational outreach is very important. But again, once a month is enough. If you want to do it twice a month, you could do that too. It's very important to also research how you can speak at your city council meetings. We did this for 2 full years. Each month we would go, and at the start we had to get there at 7 in the morning because it was first come, first serve. And so we'd get there at 7 and we'd have to basically sit on the floor until 9:30 until they'd let us in, because only the first 10 people would get a chance to speak. And then we would address the city council and we would tell them about all the violations, what we had documented from the last month, since we'd been there the previous month. So those are very important. And you don't have to, some city councils won't let you speak unless the issue is on the agenda. But that's something that can be revisited, but I would recommend you still try to do it and just let them know, you know, we're going to keep trying to speak at your city council meetings until you get a bill introduced and get it on the agenda. We would also do Twitter storms from time to time, where we would take, say, a Saturday or Sunday. And these are good to do after a major accident, like after Ryder or after a horse dies in a city around the world, where you contact all the mayors and all the city council members from all the cities that are actively working on a campaign. Or if you are running a campaign in your city, you provide all the contact information, all the Twitter handles for your officials, all the phone numbers, email addresses, Facebook handles, Instagram handles for your officials, and urge your volunteers to take 1 hour on a Saturday to contact all those officials that you provide for them. And you can get that done in 1 hour. And that's 1 hour to, you know, to give up on it one Saturday. Call storms, Twitter storms are all the same. I call them contact storms now. And where you know, because not everybody's on Twitter. So if people aren't on Twitter, urge them to make the phone calls and send emails. Endorsements. By the time we got our bill passed, we had more than 200 business endorsements from veterinarians, animal hospitals, animal sanctuaries, animal welfare organizations, local businesses, and major animal rights groups. So we got PETA's endorsement, we got Humane Society of the United States endorsement, as well as Mercy for Animals. So when I would go and testify before my city council, I would say, on behalf of the Chicago Alliance for Animals, 1,700 members, which wasn't much, 1,700, it's nothing. But I would say I'm speaking on behalf of the millions of people who have signed our business endorsements, because I'm speaking on behalf of all those people who are members of PETA and HSUS and Mercy for Animals. So business endorsements are huge. And we also, when we went to protest outside Mayor Lightfoot's office, I printed out all those endorsements and I brought them in a stack. and showed them that these are business endorsements. All these businesses want Chicago to ban horse carriages. Of course, an online petition is very important too, but please don't rely on an online petition. When you just providing names of people is not going to convince your officials to ban horse carriages. We also did a walk for carriage horses down by the carriage horse stand where we had our signs and we walked around. I honestly think Philadelphia's rally was much more powerful than our walk. It was a great job. It's also important to get media. I reached out to local media and sent press releases on a regular basis. And I'm happy to guide anyone on drafting press releases and reaching out to local reporters and just calling them up and saying, hey, I'm running a campaign to ban horse carriages. We've documented all these violations. We have all these business endorsements. And would you be willing to cover our campaign? With the DAAs, there is a new thing where you can tag everyone in your group, which makes it very easy. And you want to urge them to, again, to simply take a minute to make one call or send one message one way and then comment how, and urge them to refrain from reacting and not to share until they take action themselves. Nobody should be asking anyone else to be taking action until we do so ourselves. And again, anyone from anywhere can participate in these actions. This is an example of our paper petition that we would take to our monthly outreach. Again, you'll see people from different states and different countries. This is an example. If you have someone who comes to sign your petition and they are very passionate about wanting to see horse carriages banned, that's when I would ask them, would you be willing to take 30 seconds to a minute to tell us on camera why you want to see horse carriages banned? And this is a woman who really hit me hard. I think I started crying too.
I believe that this kind of industry banned from Chicago is a horrible industry, and it's not fair to them like at all. And I'm from the UK and I hate it so much.
So
Thank you so much.
Those are very powerful. You get some videos like that of people just showing, how important it is that they, that this should be banned and that it makes them cry. I mean, I know I started crying when she started crying. And then you send these to, say I took that on a Saturday, the following Monday, that would be something I would share in my DAA. I'd say, please share this video with Alderman Jones. This is an example of one of our endorsement pledges. Again, you can ask any business. It doesn't have to be a veterinarian, it doesn't have to be animal related. It can be a local restaurant. It can be a local, animal shelters are good. This was a local animal shelter that signed our petition. Facebook is critical to these campaigns. I mean, so is, I believe Twitter's very powerful too, and Instagram. But for me, Facebook is very important because you have to email or message a lot of people, because you're going to message a lot of people the same thing. And so you basically copy and paste and say, would you please sign our endorsement pledge? This is just an example of how many had signed our signed on as co-sponsors. These are some of the other cities that have banned horse carriages. And at this time, Montreal and Istanbul have both banned horse carriages. So this is kind of the things I've already said. Research your laws. Also, always encourage your locals to meet, to set up Zoom calls or in-person meetings with their city council member, and to not give up. I tell people, if you call and you ask for a meeting and they don't respond, you got to call back in another week and say, I spoke with Jane last Monday. I urged a return call. Nobody has called me back. I would like to meet with my city council member. I live in their ward. I want a meeting. Okay, I know I'm running over time here, so I send press releases, letters to the editors. Another good idea is to urge your volunteers, like a different volunteer, maybe have 2 people send one a month, one to one paper, a letter to the editor, and another letter to the editor to another local newspaper. I'll just close it out with, if you want to do this, I have a very active, we have an active partnership. And Tiffany's going to talk a little bit about their campaign in Philadelphia. And we have a very active Twitter at Chicago Animal Rights and at Ban Horse Carriage with 1 R, because I ran out of characters. And the partnership to Ban Horse Carriages Worldwide, or partnership to banhorsecarriages.com, is the most up-to-date website listing the accidents, the fatalities, successes around the world. So please always refer to that on your campaign. So thank you for joining tonight. I'm sorry I was long-winded and I could not think of what the word stable was. But if you are serious and you want to really ban these in your town, I can help you and I'd be happy to. But please know that you have to stay in it. You can't, have 3 meetings with your local city council members and then give up, because people have done that. And it's very difficult when they do, because when we give this time, we got to stick with it. So I'll leave you there, and I'll be here to answer any questions. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Jody. If you can put any of those resources or handles in the chat for folks, that would be great, or if anybody else can do that. So now I'm going to turn it over to Tiffany. Tiffany Stair is co-founder of Revolution Philadelphia, an independent grassroots animal rights organization founded and organized by women. And she's going to talk a little bit about the efforts going on in Philly. Go ahead, Tiff.
Thanks, Michelle, and thanks AAM for having this workshop, and thank you, Jody. I'll keep this brief, everyone, but my name is Tiffany Stair, and I'm an activist and vegan of 6 years. And in February of 2020, I logged into Instagram and saw one of the most horrific videos I've ever seen, and that was Aisha, the carriage horse that collapsed while working in New York City. At that time, I knew nothing about horses, but I was so beside myself that I needed to start a campaign in Philadelphia to end horse carriages. And that's when I met Jody and Stephanie, and Red Philly partnered with Ban Horse Carriages Philadelphia, and we started our campaign. Jody and her strategies and tactics she's mentored us throughout this whole process, and her strategies work. As far as Philly goes, initially I thought this would be easy, that we could easily convince our elected officials that horse carriages were cruel and inhumane and needed to go and had no place on city streets in Philadelphia. And I quickly realized that wasn't going to happen. It's been a very long and tedious road. It's been a frustrating road. It's been close to 2 years now that we've been working on this, but we keep going because we know it's going to happen. So basically, how do you convince an elected official that horse carriages are cruel? You can't. Arguing the morality piece won't help them resolve their vested interest in this industry, because there's a lot of secrecy and dark money behind this. You just have to basically stay persistent. You have to stay in the forefront of their minds. The DAAs that Stephanie puts together are very, very crucial and critical to our campaign. Just like Jody said, contacting them is critical. So what we did in Philly is, we have our petition with close to 40,000 signatures. We became engulfed in Philly politics. We learned about every council member and what, their goals are and what they're doing in Philadelphia. We launched a selfie campaign last year, which was really great. We had hundreds of submissions that we posted and tagged our elected officials in, and their timelines were flooded with our photos for quite a while. We protested. We go out still at least every month, and we hold signs and gather signatures and educate the public. We've had a ton of media coverage because we put out press releases for big events. Our rally was covered by numerous sources. We were on 3 different networks for the evening news prime time, and we had several write-ups for the event. And same thing with Ryder. After Ryder had collapsed, we launched another press release, and we had a ton of coverage for that too. And that's huge because our officials feel the pressure of that. When the media starts to come after them, they feel the pressure more so than just coming from us. So through, the press releases and the media coverage, we also document. Stephanie and I often go undercover. We'll sit in out of visibility of the drivers because they know us. We kind of try to disguise ourselves, and we'll sit there and document for hours. And we often gather numerous violations. Nothing, life-threatening, but oftentimes they're seen not holding the reins, and that is a law, that is against the law, and that puts horses and people in danger. Those horses could spook and bolt and kill somebody and kill themselves. So documenting that, taking a 5-second video, mashing up those clips and sending it to your city council member is huge. We've got, one of the drivers who was, he didn't like his job and he didn't like the horses, let's just say that. He was fired because we documented him doing a lot of unfavorable things that were against the law. So, and something else we did was we really connected with the community. We reached out to various groups like human rights organizations, political organizations, businesses, and, we tapped into that other side of it, whether they were involved with animals or not. And we've gained a lot of support. And through that, we constantly get anonymous tips of concerns for the carriage horses, and that really helps our campaign too. So basically, in addition to that, we've received so many photos and disturbing images. Just a couple of weeks ago, someone was walking by the stables and a horse ran up to them and he had wounds all over his chest. And that's pivotal for us because now we can not only claim there's abuse and neglect, we can actually prove it. And that's something that, tapping into your community and the people that live near the stables or live near the tag line, that's huge for you. So, basically the point to all of this is just be persistent. Like Jodie said, do not give up. Philly has had numerous groups in and out of this campaign, and, they've advanced the laws for horses, but it's just not enough. No one has ever stuck around long enough to see a ban through. And we will have a ban, and I think it's coming soon. The protests and outreaches, they're very important, but knowing your laws and local politics is even more critical. Don't back down. Gain support from other groups doing this, from unlikely people and sources. Get the media involved and keep contacting your officials. And I think if you just stick with that, you will get a ban. And I know Philadelphia is on its way, and it's going to happen very soon. So thank you.
Thank you so much, Tiffany. That was really great to hear. Stay with us. So now I'm going to open it up to questions. There is a question already in the chat for Jodie, which is, in Chicago and other cities where a ban was obtained, was alternate employment arranged for the drivers? And wouldn't this have to be part of the pitch to achieve a ban? Economics always figure into ending slavery. What do you say to that, Jodie?
When we would meet with our city council members and when we would testify before them, we would suggest, job training or, alternative employment. But it got to the point where the operators broke the law so often that I stopped talking about it, because the way I looked at it is, we made it very clear we're not trying to put anybody out of a job. We have no interest in, people losing their jobs. However, if you go to your job every day and you break the law every day, all day long, then maybe you shouldn't be allowed to have that job. And I would say that when I would testify, I would say, if I went to my job every day and I broke the law, I wouldn't expect to keep that job. And I go, every single time we document the horse carriage operations, we witness horses being overworked, horses not provided water, horses worked in temperatures when they are not allowed, horses on streets at times they're not allowed, horses on streets that they're not allowed. And I could go on with all, the same thing, not holding the reins, walking away from the horses. So it got to the point in Chicago where we luckily did not have to focus on the job issue, because we had the ammunition of the violations. And that's why I can't stress enough to everybody who's on this call that you got to document the violations, and then you've got to get those violations to your officials. And I feel like I didn't go over it enough, and so I'll just say it real quickly. I don't know of any other city, maybe Philly's done this. I mean, I know Tiffany and Stephanie are doing great work, but who literally get at the stand at the start of their shift. If your drivers start at 9 a.m. or 10 a.m., you get down there before they get there and you stay the entire day. That's what we did multiple times. And the reason you got to do that is because you prove that this horse that arrived at 9:30, who's got a black splotch on his right side, and he's with carriage number 5. He's been here since 9:30 and it's now 1 a.m. and you can prove it's the same horse. Now, if you don't stay the entire day, they're going to tell the officials, oh, we swapped that horse out. No, but we have the video from 9:30 in the morning going on till 1, showing the same horse with the same driver with the same license plate number. So that's how we did it multiple times, and we proved that they worked them more than 12 hours. So that's really, I think, a very critical, it's very important to get those violations. And I can tell you, your city, your horse carriage operators are violating the laws. They are.
So there's a question from Julia in the chat. When you ask people to send DAAs by email, do you provide a template? You mentioned keeping it short and just saying you're against horse carriages.
No, I don't provide a sample email or a sample. What I do in the DAAs is I say, I usually, I put the general, how they work at the start. And then I usually give a little background about like whatever campaign I'm working on, which now I've got other campaigns, but I'll say, okay, say if there was an accident last weekend or that we documented violations, I'd say on Saturday, we documented four horses being overworked, more than 6 hours and blah, blah, blah. So then after that, I would give the gist of what happened, what we documented the weekend before. And then I'd say today's DAA is to urge Alderman Jones to sign on as a co-sponsor to bill, blah, 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 in bold. So that's the gist of what we're asking you to do is you're urging Alderman Jones to sign on as a co-sponsor. And then after that, I'll usually write, please consider letting him know that we documented 4 horses being overworked last weekend. Please consider sharing this video. Now that you don't have to share the video, you don't have to tell him anything except urging him to sign on as a co-sponsor. So the reason I don't provide a sample email is because those auto emails that a lot of big organizations put out, I'm not saying they're worthless, but it's very easy for officials to see the same email flooding their inbox that might go to spam and ignore them, just ignore them. But when an official is getting, their phone is ringing off the hook, they're getting emails from a bunch of different people that say different things. You don't want everybody sending the same thing. Now, if I sent something saying, please co-sponsor the bill to ban horse carriages, and Gloria wrote, please ban horse carriages, that's fine. I mean, the goal is the same, whether they sign on as a co-sponsor or say, please ban horse carriages. We're giving different messages, but it's still saying the same thing. That's why I don't give a sample. One sentence is all it takes. Where I say today's DAA is in bold, that's the gist of what we want you to do, of what we want you to ask or urge of that official. And then say it in your own words, in one sentence, if you like. You could say, please ban horse carriages. You could say, I don't like horse carriages. Can you ban them? So that's why I don't provide. We all are, if you're on Facebook, then you can be an activist, right? You can send a Facebook message, you can write on a Facebook post, and we all know how to make a phone call. So.
Excellent. Are there any more questions? Go ahead and put them in the chat if you have another question or something you just want to share. I don't know, Tamara, do you want to share something? You seem you have some experience as a lawyer with this. Is there anything you'd like to unmute and share?
Hi, Jody. Good to see you again. And I see Tiffany there. Pleased to see you. Yes, I am the president of the National Lawyers Guild right now, having been the chair of its Animal Rights Committee. And we are working to ban the horse-drawn carriages here in New York. We'll have a webinar at the end of the month on November 30th that people can register for. But in the interim, myself and Kate Scott, the former ADA and currently working with Center for a Humane Economy, we were talking about connecting with attorneys in the various cities where horse-drawn carriages are still operating. And then those attorneys would be helping local activists. So if you're interested in doing something like that, or if that would be helpful, feel free to contact me. My email is tamara_Betic@yahoo.com. I've placed it in the chat. Just put horse-drawn carriages in the subject line. Thank you.
Awesome. Any other questions? Oh, okay. Jeff is asking, how many cities are actively working on horse carriage bans?
I've had 2 cities that we've guided through the partnership, and we've had multiple meetings with their officials. One is a rather small, smaller town, and we had at least 3 of their city council members tell us they support a ban, and then they gave up. And I mean, I don't want to be Debbie Downer here, but I have guided many activists about these strategies, and we've had Zoom meetings with a lot of officials, and then they just stop doing DAAs. They stop reaching out to their locals, and I do everything I can to keep encouraging them to stay active, and then they don't. And when you have a smaller town and you only have to convince 4 or 5 city council members to support it, compared to like Chicago or New York City, where you have 50 city council members and you have to convince 26, it seems like it's very doable. And so I guess I'm just saying this because I hope those people that I worked with in the past will be willing to start up their campaign again, especially if you have any city council members who tell you they support a ban. You want to get on that before that person is voted out or their term is up. You want to get it done. When you have anyone supportive in your city council, you got to keep that relationship going and keep urging all your local people to reach out to them. Activism is not hitting likes, hitting like on Facebook or complaining on when you see an accident, a horse carriage accident, and getting on whoever shared the accident and saying, this is horrible, this needs to end. That's not activism, people. Activism is contacting our officials, because all the complaining on Facebook and Twitter is not reaching our officials. And if you're going to take the time to complain on a social media post that horse carriages need to be banned, you should take that message and copy and paste it and email it to the official, or Facebook message it to the official. If you're on Facebook, go to that official's page and Facebook message it to them. One of my goals, in addition to banning horse carriages worldwide, is helping people learn to become effective activists. And again, if you're on Facebook, you can be an activist. I don't care what age you are. If you know how to type on Facebook, you can do it. Okay, so please know that, reacting to all of the sad cruelty on social media is not doing anything. I mean, I'm not saying don't do it, but take that anger and sadness and turn it into effective activism. And when we have just about, just a couple minutes left, I want to share a story with everybody that I did not include in the presentation that might give everybody some encouragement and hope.
We have a few more questions
Mhm.
before we wrap up. And Carla asks, after horse-drawn carriages were banned in Chicago, did all horses go to sanctuaries?
So as you may have heard me, if you were on, the mayor's office promised us that it would be a requirement. If they gave the horses one more year, it would be a requirement that the horses had to go to sanctuary or to rescues. After that meeting, they basically refused to respond to us. So they never followed through on that promise. So what we did was we kept fighting for our ban. And in the meantime, I was reaching out to sanctuaries and horse rescues and urging them to reach out to the 3 companies once we got the ban and offer homes for the horses should they need them. And so I had at least 4 sanctuaries and horse rescues reach out to Chicago's 3 horse carriage operators and offer homes when the ban went through. The ban went through, it passed in April of 2020, but it didn't go into effect until January 1st, 2021. So it gave the horse carriage operators more than half a year to figure out, if what they were going to do, if they were going to, keep their horses, or should they not be able to afford to continue to feed them or give proper homes, that they would have time to find homes for them. So once we get past our ban, at least 4 sanctuaries and rescues reached out to the 3 operators. Only 1 responded to them and said, basically, nope. The other 2 never responded to the rescues or sanctuaries. I was going to fundraise to try to get the horses, but they were not willing to part with the horses. So we did everything we could to, get the horses to sanctuary and to rescues and out of the hands of their exploiters. But at the end of the day, horses are considered property. Sadly, in this world, animals are still considered property. So there was nothing we could do. We did everything we could. And I actually had a friend who knew one of the horse carriage operators, and she was trying to find out from the owner if she would allow them to go to sanctuary, but she was adamant she would not. So no, we did not get them to sanctuary. And I was saddened by that, and I would have loved to see them all get to sanctuary. But at the end of the day, we got 3 companies to stop exploiting horses and put them in harm's way every day. And we got 1 company to stop breeding horses. So it wasn't completely a success because of that, but there was only so much we could do as the people who do not own the horses. But I will end that with saying that I know every city who's working on a ban right now has homes for the horses, if the exploiters allow them to go to sanctuary. The problem is you cannot force these companies or these owners to allow their horses to go to sanctuary, even though we have the homes and we have the sanctuaries offering one for each and every horse.
Karen in the chat is asking, have you helped activists in any Canadian cities or other countries?
Yes, we have a Malta group. We have a Ban Horse Carriages chapter in Malta. And I've worked with activists in Niagara-on-the-Lake, as well as Krakow, Poland. We have a group in Krakow now. I will work with anybody, anywhere on these campaigns, if you are willing to commit to the work. I tell people a good starting point is an hour a week. If you can commit 1 hour a week. And again, once you post these DAAs, once you already post one, you don't have to do that work again. The contact, the target, their contact information doesn't change. So all you really have to change in that DAA is, basically, if you're changing an accident to the most recent accident or a recent violation, and commit to doing outreach one hour a month. That's nothing. We all can give 1 hour a month. We all can give a little time a day. And again, these DAAs, we make it so easy for people to take action in 1 minute. So these, when I worked on our campaign, which we started in 2015, but didn't actively, I say it didn't officially start in 2017, because that's when we started documenting violations. That's when we started posting DAAs. I worked full time. I worked full time throughout our campaign. And I would be working on my computer until I had to go to my job. And I hated turning my computer off. And then I would take the bus to my job and I would be on my phone the entire time working. I'm not saying you all have to do that, but I'm saying it's doable. You can do work around your job. If you have a full-time job, you can do this work outside, you know, around it. You can schedule a DAA at night or in the morning. You can schedule it to go out at 9 a.m. so you don't have to do it while you're at work. All these things are doable if you're willing to put in a little time. But if you are not willing to put in the time, your city, chances are your city will not get a ban unless a horse or a person dies on your streets. And then even so, look at New York City, look at St. Louis, horses have collapsed and died, and they're still fighting a ban. So
this might be the last question before we wrap up. From Dawn, how involved should our conversation with public officials be regarding electric carriages? And maybe you want to explain what an electric carriage is. And I know you have them in Chicago.
we don't have them in Chicago.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Oh, that's okay. Yeah, no, we never did get them. That's not something we pushed for. I have mixed emotions. I mean, if it helps your campaign, I say go for it, but it's not. I think what's more important than pushing for electric carriages is showing your officials violations. Because transitioning to electric carriages is going to take time and logistics to buy them, to get them on the street. Plus, all the horse carriage operators say we're not going to drive those things. I mean, most horse carriage operators will refuse to drive them. So I think it makes sense to bring it up to officials as an alternative mode of transportation. But I think it's more important to be at the horse carriage stand from morning till late at night and document horses being overworked and any other violations you can, and convince your officials to ban them based on the fact that that the horse carriage operators refuse to self-regulate. The city doesn't have time to babysit the trade. And when you've got horses dying on the street or people being rushed to the emergency room, it just doesn't belong in our urban landscapes anymore. So, I mean, I'm not opposed to e-carriages, and by the way, e-carriages are basically electric carriages that have a driver and they have, you know, the look of an old-fashioned carriage without the horse. I'm not opposed to them. I just don't think, I think the time and the logistics and the cost involved will take longer to get a ban than to focus on the more important things, such as violations of the law, the dangers, and the like. I saw someone asked if we were on Instagram. Yes, we are on Instagram. I'm not very active there because CAA and the partnership is basically me. So the majority of my time is on Facebook and Twitter, but I know that Instagram's pretty powerful, so I should be on there more.
Do you know your Instagram handle that you can put it in the chat anyway, even though you're not very active on it for now?
Yeah, I can put it. I think it's just Chicago Alliance for Animals.
Okay.
But
Okay, maybe Trey can put it in there. Yeah, so I think that will, you know, in terms of questions, you know, folks can always reach out to you. I hope everybody will just read the chat. And if you want to share your own Instagram handle, anybody, or your YouTube channel in the chat, feel free. And with that, I'm going to give it, you know, back to, I don't know, Jodie and Tiffany, if you want to just offer just a few final words. Tiffany, do you want to go first, and then Jodie?
Go for it, Tiffany.
Thank you. So like I said before, just being persistent, and, you know, so one thing I did fail to mention is using social media. like Jodie said, Twitter is huge for your local political leaders. They're not too active on Instagram, although we still make a lot of videos about the horses and tag them. We do utilize Twitter more than anything, and I think that's your best chance of reaching them if you're doing DAAs and reaching out. But just like Jodie said, like the biggest piece of advice I could give you is to stay on it and not limit yourself to just one form of activism with this campaign. It's multifaceted and it requires a very multifaceted approach. And knowing your laws in and out is huge, and who's responsible for enforcing them and how to submit violations is going to be, you know, the number one thing to have in your back pocket. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Jodie. Any final words?
Yeah. So, yeah, I agree with Tiffany. A multi-pronged approach is very important. I'm not saying that my steps and strategies are the end all. I'm sure there's other groups out there that have used other strategies that work for them. I think the more the better. We should employ all sorts of ideas. And if you have an idea, then throw it out there, because you never know what might reach, you know, what might reach the right official who might be willing to introduce a bill or an ordinance. But I wanted to leave everybody with this. As I mentioned at the start of my presentation, we reached out to the officials since May of 2015 until November of 2017. So that's what, 2.5 years, if I'm thinking on my cough medicine brain. And they wouldn't return our calls. I didn't live in Alderman Riley or Alderman Hopkins ward, so they didn't have to call me back. It wasn't until the second documentation in November of 2017, when we documented so many violations, that I still didn't get a call back from him, but he introduced a ban. He introduced a ban because of our violations and because of our media. He told us he didn't want to introduce a ban. Hopkins never responded to our calls. So fast forward to April 2020, March 2020, when we finally get our bill heard the second time in the license committee. And we again get up, we have the chance to testify in support of the bill, and as do the horse carriage operators. One of the operators got up and once again slandered us and said that we burned down their barn and that we lie about them, we doctor our videos, all of which is obviously not true. And then he said that they've tried to meet with the alderman before, the alderman wouldn't meet with them. He actually said to Alderman Riley that he seemed bored. So after his 3 minutes were up, Alderman Riley said, since you brought up my name, I'm going to respond. And he adamantly defended me, Chicago Alliance for Animals, and all my volunteers, and said multiple times that you can't blame these people. You can't call them liars because they care about horses. You can't call them liars because they are pointing out that Chicago's law is being broken day in, day out when you're on the street. He said, I'm not bored, I'm here. I don't even have to be here at this meeting today. I'm not part of this committee, but I'm here because it matters to me. And he said the previous alderman whose spot he took had warned him about this industry. He said, they'll make you all sorts of promises. And he said, at the end of the day, they do not self-regulate. They continue to break the law, and that the city simply doesn't have time to babysit this trade. And I mean, as I was watching Alderman Riley and Alderman Hopkins, after Alderman Riley said all this and defended us and defended his bill and why he introduced it, then Alderman Hopkins said, and I will remind you that no animal advocates were ever charged with burning down that barn. So I'd be very careful about the words you use and not to slander others. So you go from the September 2018 hearing when we got, after a 4.5 hearing, and our vote got blocked. And I went home that night and cried myself to sleep. And then you fast forward to March 2020, and I have these 2 aldermen who refused to ever return my calls, adamantly defending our campaign and animal advocates in general. And that day I just started crying out of happiness. And they passed it in the committee unanimously. And then, of course, we got bumped because of COVID. And it finally gets back on, which was scary because I thought they might feel sorry for these operators because of COVID and them not having work. But when we finally got the bill to the full city council for a vote and we passed it 46-4, it just really made me feel that we didn't have any of their votes. We didn't have any of their support when we started this campaign. And your officials might not know. And you got to remember, everybody, I get this all the time. My officials don't care. Nobody cares. Yes, they do. They have cats and dogs. Most people, if they see a slaughterhouse video, they're going to be offended. They're going to be disgusted and saddened. We've got to remember that officials are just like us. Just because they are in the position they are in doesn't mean they don't have a heart. So keep that in mind when you communicate with them. Keep that in mind that they can be convinced that there is animal cruelty out there and that they should do the right thing since they are in a position of power. So give them a chance and keep working on them. If I had given up back in September of 2018, like I said, horses would still be on the street. So it's our job to keep getting out there and documenting violations and showing those violations, and then getting out there once a month and reaching out to the public and urging those people to contact their officials. Oh, one more last thing. I can keep talking. When we would do our outreach on the street and people would come up and sign our paper petition, I had a little spiel I would say to them. I would say, do you live in Chicago? And if they did, I'd say, do you know who your city council member is or alderman? And a lot of people did not know. And so I would tell them how to do it. I'd say, when you get home, if you don't mind taking a couple minutes, go into Google, typing who's my alderman, and put in your address. And then just take this one step further and give them a quick phone call or shoot them a tweet or shoot them an email and urge them to support our band, our horse carriage band. And if they did not live in the city of Chicago, I would say, if you could do us a favor and give Mayor Lightfoot a phone call. We had Mayor's phone number, email address, Facebook, everything on our flyer. So anyone who lived outside the city, we'd urge to contact the mayor. And anybody who lived in the city, we urge them to contact their alderman or your city council member. And that was a very important thing to do along with those testimonials. So I will leave it there. I could keep talking, but I put my Facebook page there. So if you want to start your own campaign or keep going with a campaign or have questions, please reach out to me and Chicago Alliance for Animals. Thank you.
Thank you, Jodie. That was such a hopeful story, a hopeful ending, and really an example of the culmination of all of your hard work. So bravo to you, and thank goodness for the horses that will no longer suffer, that you really have been instrumental in that. So hang on, folks, for just another moment, because I want to wrap up with a few quick announcements regarding AAM. So I'd like to announce a few of our upcoming workshops. On November 15th, which is next week, we have Thinking Like an Animal. On November 22nd, we have Pressure Campaigns. On December 6th, we have Vegan Kid Activists. And we have ongoing workshops, so more to be announced. Please check out our previous workshops on our YouTube channel and subscribe. I'd also like to announce our 2023 live events. The AAM Washington, D.C. Week of Action is taking place March 14th through the 20th, 2023. And the Colorado Convergence is taking place in and around Denver. The dates are June 24th through July 1st, 2023. No experience required for either, but registration is required. So you'll find the events on our Facebook page and website. So it's not too early to register for those events. Well, that wraps up another AAM workshop. Thank you, Jodie and Tiffany, for your time and wisdom. Thank you, Trey, for working the back end. Thank you all for being here and the tireless work you're doing for the animals. If you're interested in becoming a mentor or mentee or want to get involved, please reach out to any AAM mentor or visit our website, animalactivismmentorship.com. Meantime, we'd love to add you to our email newsletter list as well. Thank you all so much. Until next time, stay strong and live vegan, everyone.